Welcome to the November 18th, 2025 meeting of the Kennebunk for the Trustees for Kennebunk Light and Power District. All members are here, minus Chris. I think he's going to show. So with that, order. Turn it over to Anna, and then take over.
Thank you. This is Todd Cody and Josh Snow with SGC Engineering. We also have Kevin Zia, our general foreman. The first item on the agenda is a presentation on the Water Street substation and the replacement options that we've been looking at. So I'll let Todd take it from here. Presentation.
Sure. So I've been working with Kevin and Anna now for a while, kind of evaluating the existing Water Street substation and what it would take to some sort of upgrade to meet the needs. Based on the analysis we had done earlier on, was basically due diligence to basically verify that it's probably time to make that station replaced. So we looked at a variety of 4 options. So if you want to go to the next slide. There you go. Oh, sorry. There you go. So with identifying that the substation ought to be replaced, repaired, rebuilt, the intent of that analysis was evaluation of the safety, reliability, and the accommodation for future growth. 4 options were fundamentally considered. One was upgrade the existing facility as it is, but do what needs to be done to make it to meet the criteria to be safe, reliable, and have some of the additional benefits that you're not getting today. The other option is a new skid-mounted substation. That would be a small footprint. We'll get into the details a little bit here, but basically a new substation using newer technology, small footprint. Third option would be a new open-air substation, which is a more traditional substation you guys are probably used to see. And then expansion of the West K substation to accommodate the load that is currently within Water Street. So, slide. Upgrading the existing facility would require extensive outages and pretty complex sequencing in order to be able to repair, replace pretty much all components within the facility to meet clearances. You've got a lot of stuff going on in a very tight space. So the complex sequencing would be trying to keep all the customers' lights on reliably during the phasing of all of that construction effort. Most of the equipment is dated, aged, or is not in a position in the station to meet current clearance requirements. So effectively, basically be building a new substation while trying to maintain this one in service in the same footprint. Unlikely to source a mobile from your neighborhood friends at Cincinnati Power Company or long-term rental from another location for probably a pretty significant duration of time during this work. And you have ultimately a prolonged schedule. It's costly, and there's safety concerns. And then not listed there is also the reliability concerns. We do a lot of switching to keep the customers on while the construction is occurring at the existing facility. So ultimately, through this analysis, it was deemed not a feasible option. So option 1 basically determined that there's more cons than there are pros. Next slide. Option 2, I guess what you're seeing here in the image to the right is you see the Water Street, Rogers Pond Access Road, and then black is the existing Water Street footprint, and then in green it's kind of showing the small footprint of the skid-mounted option. Actual dimensions aren't known because there's no manufacturer, so we don't have legitimate equipment dimensions, but roughly that's kind of what we're thinking is going to be the footprint. But the idea is you'd have a prefabricated, delivered, installed adjacent, have it all prefabricated, delivered, and installed adjacent to the existing yard. Minimal outage risk and compact footprint. And there's a way where effectively during the majority of the construction, the existing water stream would be energized the entire time. So minimize the risk to customer outages. And then the new solution would come with all kinds of newer technology that's pretty industry standard these days that we're not currently leveraging today. So you get modern standards, scalable for future growth that we designed to accommodate whatever you have coming down the line in the next many years. Estimated to be the most affordable solution and the shortest construction schedule. We consider this viable and cost effective. Part of the reason we have a shorter construction schedule, which also translates into more affordable, is the fact that if you go with a skid solution, a lot of the engineering, design, construction happens in a factory somewhere. The end product is delivered when all the site construction is complete. So basically, you do all the civil site work, you have it all prepared, you have piers or foundations, the stuff would get rolled in from a truck and lifted into place, and then basically finish the construction with that much shorter window than some of the other options that we have there. Go to the next one. There we go. So I mentioned the open air substation, the substations you typically see driving down the road, West K, Water Street, open air substations. This image is showing, if we, just for graphical purposes, showing that it's adjacent or on top of the existing Water Street substation. This is about as small of a footprint as we can fit the required equipment on that piece of land without disrupting Central Power Company's incoming line section. So it's tight, and that's, again, as small as we probably feel comfortable with at the preliminary phase right now. So the other option would be to find another piece of property where you could have a little bit more space to build out a more optimal design and solution. Higher cost due to the land, permitting, and overall construction. We have a lot more parts and pieces versus something delivered on a truck. And then it does provide, long-term reliability and expandability. It does go with a lot larger price tag, a lot more materials, a lot more construction, a lot more labor intensive, as well as engineering design to produce an open air substation. And a longer construction schedule, same concept, with a lot more parts and pieces and material procurement that actually be a factor in that as well. It's considered viable, but more complex than the skid solution. And real estate is one of the major factors and variables that we have to have. Next one would be good. Option 4, natural question would be, why aren't we just expanding the west Kennebunk substation? The idea would be expand it so that it could take all of the distribution load that is fed out of Water Street and transfer that load over to West K. There are impacts associated with ISO New England and Central Power Company when you start modifying the 115 kV system. Significant rebuild for the existing distribution system. So if we have to tie all the Water Street circuits over to West K from where we're sitting today all the way down the road to Alfred Road, you'd have to figure out how to run 4 or 5 distribution circuits along the length of that road. And the poles, I believe, today are already pretty congested down that right away. So it required pretty extensive distribution construction. Reduce system reliability. If we were to migrate those loads over, the entire KLPD system would be sourced from a single CMP source, being the section 115 kV, section 163. So ultimately, an outage, whether planned or unplanned outage on that single transmission line, would take the entire system down. So that's a concern as well. estimated at a very high cost. You're talking high voltage equipment, talking impacts from CMP. They do a lot of coordination with them and their management to come up with a plan, agree with the plan, how much engineering, and how far that scope goes. We don't know for certain at this time, but we expect CMP to have some thoughts on how these modifications will take place and any impacts to their systems. And then ISO New England, I guess, is kind of tied into that. You have to play by different rules when you're getting involved in 100 kV or higher. So those bureaucratical, jurisdictional, regulatory requirements certainly get a little bit more cumbersome, which at the end of the day adds time and money, I think, to the overall project. So through our analysis on this one, we basically deemed it not feasible as well. Well, I'll let Josh go over this one.
Walk to the TV so I can kind of illustrate it. So this is an existing flood map that FEMA provides for the current Water Street location. You can see here, this is the outline of the river and kind of where the banks go for high and low tide. This blue shading, this orange shading represents the annual exceedance percentage. So that blue is the 1%. So every 100-year storm is kind of how far it gets. And then that orange you see is the 500-year storms. So in the past 2 years, we've had 2 100-year storms that kind of equal to that 500. So I don't know if you were near the Water Street substation this past year or two, but you can see it kind of reached that 14.4 foot mark right there. Right now, this substation sits at the 20 foot mark. So you're 6 feet off your 500 meter or your 500-year storm. So it's viable and it's a low risk for any extreme flooding. So these are based off maps of 2024. So pretty recent data. This is still a preliminary analysis for flood risk analysis. We're kind of doing work with Acorn Engineering to get an actual stamp certified plan for showing that this is a low risk area for a substation. But this is the data they can provide right now.
You say 6 feet, talking elevation?
Elevation,
Not
yes.
horizontal.
Correct, elevations. That's 6 feet off of your 14.4 500.
And for clarification, Josh, when you say it's viable, but we're still assessing any mitigation that would be needed to address flood risk.
Correct. So and part of the full report that we're going to receive is the mitigations and a full hydrolysis model that kind of shows observed impacts of the flooding and modeled impacts of the flooding to make sure that they're both aligned. So we're not missing anything when we do our mitigation steps of either pillars that they sit on or raised pad, raised civil site. This kind of checks the box on all that. But right now, they can just tell us that it's a low risk site.
So does the modeling that we're talking about anticipate sea level rise over the next 50 years?
Correct. That would be the full report. Right now, this is just working off the 100-year, 500-year maps.
Do you have a section on there, A to A? Is that a section line or is that something else?
So that's an alignment line. So that's for aligning the 100-year, 500-year maps. This is kind of a snippet of the actual drawing that they provided.
So George, you mentioned this is above the tidal zone, right?
No, it's not.
And the tidal zone come to the
That
bottom
goes to the
of
bottom of the dam.
bottom of
Correct.
the bottom of the dam is
Yeah.
tidal. Oh, I thought it was the bottom of a project.
I believe it's the bottom of the dam.
I think it's somewhere in between.
There we are.
Okay.
I always like.
We've been told that the sewer outlet at KSD is ahead of time. So if it's coming up further than that now, that's just a change.
It's a good question.
So it's a salmon that's going all the way to the dam now.
Deal wise. Is the answer to that something that you want us to pursue working with Acorn to confirm where title lands?
I think the report will probably naturally flush that out.
I definitely wrote the question.
So that
So are you gonna use the high average tide numbers that they have, or are you gonna look for worst case scenarios?
So they always look for the worst case scenario. So that's why we're talking like the 100-year and 500-year storms.
Right, 'cause we always use high average tide.
Okay,
So they're looking
that's
at,
why the modeling would look at sea level rise, because those projections are anywhere from 1 to 3 meters. Meters, not feet. So, that all come into play when you design what the piers are, what elevations the skid would be.
Ready for questions?
So.
Oh, no, we're not done.
Yeah,
Well, let him turn it.
I'm just asking.
We got just basically 2 slides that we're done. So I guess just kind of recap, we only find that options 2 and 3 are viable, which is your open air solution and your skid mount solution. They have different pros and cons, but we find that skid mount is lower cost, shorter schedule, minimal outages, modern, compact, and ultimately it would be adjacent to where the existing facility is, which has benefits. Open air, there's the real estate question, but it's a traditional solution that Kevin and his team are pretty familiar with working on all that equipment. Highly expandable in the future. It faces higher
To
costs.
what extent? How much can it be expanded in the future?
So, I guess there's a couple different ways to look at that. It's the amount of load, customer growth load, DG or DER resources, just the solar facilities, whatever, tied to your distribution systems. So there's the load capacity, and there's also the physical footprint to be able to have more distribution circuits coming out of the facility as well. So expandable is kind of multiple things.
It's possible, or just a maybe.
Both very much so.
So,
You mentioned the land issue. Do we own the land?
So those 2 layouts that we showed that had the skid solution, and then the next one showed sort of open air substation. That open air substation, our substation guys basically tried to squish it as small as they could get it to see if it's even viable to fit in that Water Street slot between the CMP transmission automation structure that's there and the existing Water Street site. And it doesn't fit great. It's pretty congested, which the end solution would meet all modern standard codes requirements, clearances and safety working spaces. So it would still be compliant, it just would be very snug versus a skid solution, you get a little bit more breathing room because everything else within the fence line is compact and ultimately pictured as not Connex boxes, but manufactured equipment.
Is there a trade-off with repair and access if it's skid mounted?
Yes, so open air substations, you can take out a single piece of equipment and swap it out for another one that's equivalent, right? So that is a benefit to that. Maintainability with open air substation. Again, if you go to a different, back to the real estate thing, if there was a different piece of property a mile up the road, you could build a traditional open air substation that didn't have to be compressed so much because you've got enough space for a full-size footprint. That's very maintainable. But then you have a uptick in real estate costs, the CMP right away build out, distribution build out. So you kind of scale up pretty significantly on the overall cost, but maintainable. The skid solution is generally maintainable. The intent would be to specify the equipment to have spare feeders, ability to swap between transformers. Each transformer can carry the full capacity of Water Street sub plus more. So it would be designed that you have a little bit more operability than you have today.
Redundancy with
Yeah.
transformers?
Yep. So that in itself is nice. From a maintainability standpoint, it would just be different than I think Kevin's group was used to on a day-to-day basis. It's just going to be different equipment that they need to do. Expandability of the skid solution, again, we're going to, assuming we go that path, the idea would be to have spare bays for future build out, transformers besides appropriately for that future growth. So there is expandability associated with it, and it's not completely limited, but I mean, I guess I get the sense that long-term growth is not going to be a concern on how we would specify that. If that makes makes sense.
For the skid mount,
That's good.
long-term growth is really not a concern. Because you ultimately have the space for the old substation at some point, right?
And then there's certain ways to do it, right? So nothing to be just hard and fast, impossible.
Little substation next to that statement. Is that usable and interface?
My opinion, I think, is in line with Dana's. Yeah, let me if I'm wrong. So once all the distribution customers are tied over to the new system, whatever that system is, I would think you would demolish and bulldoze even the CMU block building that's there on the corner. I think you demo everything, clean up all the spoils, whatever. Just clean it up, finish your permanent fence solution around the new substation, and then whatever from landscaping or public aesthetic you want to do with that little piece of property next to the rock pond. But yeah, ultimately, I envision it going away.
So to ask because people would ask.
When we talk about putting in this skid mount, watching the old, you got all this room, and I envision that you would have a smaller skid mount that would come in as the growing needs. And would maybe one more transformer so that you have two, and the third would be backup. So it makes sense that that site is prepped and reserved for, okay, for the long term future.
Just when he's talking about expandability of the open air versus the skid mounted, when you order the skid, it's fixed, and you can work within that footprint. But if you need to go beyond that, then it's a leather skid. Or
Correct. Right. You buy more equipment in the future. 15 years from now, you said we need 4 more distribution circuits into the transformer. You would just go out, specify that equipment, procure it, engineer the site that you could have pre-prep. It depends when you want to eat that cost, right? But,
So right now, how many circuits are being fed out of that station now? 7. And you've been here how long? So have we added a circuit since you've been here? No.
We've added on to low, but not a specific circuit by itself.
Would you envision the need to add circuits as, I can't imagine the growth.
I don't think there's enough room to really add a physical circuit from what's there now. Everything, I mean, the poles are pretty loaded up with circuits now. You know, there's 3 going out, factory pasture, there's 2 going up water, there's 2 going from the right of way. So, you know, I don't envision any more. I envision more growth, obviously, but as far as adding a circuit, I don't see that.
It's basically the same capacity as what we have right now. Because that is,
well, no, I think
maybe I'm saying.
we're talking about different things. So when we talk about capacity at the substation, we need to look at what we have today plus plan for any additional growth. So we've seen 15% growth in customer base over the last 10 years. And I'm blanking on the load growth, but it hasn't been 15%. And that's because the homes that are being built are more efficient, and then I think folks are investing in energy efficient measures in their older homes as well, whether that be efficiency gains supporting insulation of windows or heat pumps, but people are using less in their older homes as well. So we haven't seen the same load growth as we have population growth percentage.
What about differences in the construction time, engineering to having something completed? Are there differences, you think, between the two?
yes. So one of the benefits of the skid solution, you go out to ABC vendor, competitive bid between multiple vendors, right? And you can put in their specification that they would bid against a pile of requirements that they have to adhere to put the burden on the manufacturer of the skid solution, which includes a lot, right? You can put it on them. They can be engineering and manufacturing their equipment with input and feedback from, say, SGC and Kevin and Anna. So they can be manufacturing and engineering these deliverables, at the same time engineering for the civil and site design, and you can start doing civil site construction while that's still being manufactured.
Well, you don't have to wait, I say. you don't
So they
have to
kind
wait.
of parallel paths in that scenario. With an open air substation, it certainly would have a prolonged engineering schedule and a prolonged construction schedule. Some activities can cascade on the schedule, some things can kind of be done in parallel, but not all of them. So there's quite a process that would have to be followed for a traditional open air substation.
Right now, about delivery dates, because every now and then say, oh, yes, we can have it by X, and then it's X, Y, Z, all three down the line. What is the possibility of once you start with the vendor, commitment, and see if we can push it down for that? Is that happening right now? And I would think right now would be one of the problem times.
If you asked me 2 years ago, it's a major concern. Things are getting better in our industry these days. We did reach out to some peers in the industry who do these skid solutions, I guess preliminary timelines as far as what's lead time to provide us this, which includes the engineering part as well. And it was arranged with different manufacturers, but let's just roughly say about a year to get the whole thing engineered and built, ready to ship the site.
Wow.
Sounds pretty good.
So
Yeah, considering our whole transformers are 18 months out.
Right. The other part, though, is with the new substation, possibly or presumably be getting new power transformers as well. Those also have a lead time of around a year or so. So we wouldn't know until we're at that very moment to write the specifications and those out to bid. But it's gotten better, honestly. It was really bad for a while. Like coming out of the pandemic.
And there would be multiple bidders. There's enough interest in this kind of,
I mean, other clients of ours, but clients kind of across the country are looking at the same thing for almost the same reason. If you go up where Rock Row is in Westbrook and look up to the left and you see a little floating box in the air, that's a compact substation for long range.
Oh.
So
What's that thing?
it's 34 kV, 34 to 12 kV, same as Water Street is, but it's a different technology than the skid thing, but that compact concept and putting that engineering burden on the manufacturers.
so it, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was
Sorry.
just gonna say, how long has this kid solution been around?
I think it's growing in popularity. No, it's been a factor for a very long time. Different varieties, right? But there are companies that do this for
What's the big downfall of this kid?
You get what you get. That's what you get.
Yeah,
You don't get any more. You
It's-
don't get.
once it's there, it's not as easily configurable long term. You can't start swapping a bunch of stuff out later. So that's why getting a really fine tuned specification ahead of time with input from Kevin and people that have to own and operate it.
Are these dry transformers or what?
The power transformers, they would be oil filled, but certainly there's environmentally friendly oils on the market these days. So,
So just to understand, do we have to engineer it to provide specifications for a build? Or do they do the final, is it, where's the,
like you get to like a preliminary, so the scope is well defined and thought through, and you hand it off to the vendor.
I mean,
For
do you say this
transformers-
is what we want the substation to do? Or you say this is what the substation must include? In other words, I want a house that's gonna be 50,000 square feet, high-end finishing. Or do you say, the house is gonna be these many rooms, this type of exact finishings, et cetera.
There would be factors in the specification that say, these are hard and fast, these aren't gonna change, right? These are the decisions that we have to have. These are criteria you have to meet. These are things Kevin says you have to have. Then we would leave it open because this vendor, that vendor might have a different way of doing something or a more efficient way and say, hey, have you tried this technology? Have you thought of this technology? Or this option would be a little bit cheaper if you want to try that. So there'd be a due diligence process through the bid where we allow them to make recommendations. They do it for a living, we don't.
Right.
So we would look to them and say, if you find cost savings or technical advancements that are worth talking about,
It's a little more, what do you want it to do than specifically what equipment has to be in it?
both, but
A little bit of both.
it has to meet the
Fair
ultimate
enough.
intent, right? So,
So I had, through this whole discussion, there has been no numbers.
Hold on. Can we go to the last, sorry to interrupt, but there's one more slide and then I have these two.
So engineering next steps, kind of review and approve the preferred option. I think it's part of Tim's supposed to be here today too. Finalize the geotechnical report now that we've got some of the floodplain analysis in. So geotech would be kind of next step for that chunk of property adjacent to the existing station. Begin the permitting and procurement processes. Some of the specifications probably start just about any time. Permitting, that there can be delays in permitting efforts across the state in general. So, the permitting matrix that we can follow along with and coordinate CMP. Obviously, they're going to have some opinions, but we're trying to minimize some of that. Some other stuff by getting ahead of it, keeping them aware of what we think the plan's going to be. And some of those conversations kind of started already, just giving heads up, right? And plan the construction transition schedule. So we're going to have construction contractors certainly going to be part of the process. So procurement of the equipment, you also need to line up a contractor who's going to be doing the work. And at some point, there'll be a detailed outage and sequence plan of like how do we tie over the old to the new safely, reliably, minimize the customer impacts. So
Here's where my part comes in. So I had engineering do the assessment on the options, so I could strategically look at what our needs are, what's best to meet our needs. So the preliminary design on the skid mounted before we have final input from CMP and the flood analysis is approximately 10 million. The open air option is without land is going to be north of 13 million, over $13 million. So we don't have land. I have been looking. That's part of the effort that I've put in since I've been here in 2 years. Is after looking at the options, okay, where can we put it if it's close by? We don't have any land available to us that's within a reasonable distance, because again, if we do an open air option, even a mile up the road, we have to pay to relocate our circuits and then pay the CMP interconnection cost. So I am ready to recommend that we move forward with the skid mounted option, and I would ask, my plan is at the next meeting to ask you, when you vote on the budget, to ask you to allow me to move forward with seeking PUC approval for the project. So we have, let me just run. So this is the engineering next steps. There's a lot of other administrative steps. There's PUC approval for the project. There's PUC approval for issuing the debt. There's a voter referendum to increase our debt. There's issuing the debt. So that's, I guess, my high-level administrative steps that we would need to successfully navigate in order to move forward with the project. So I would like to move forward with PUC approval at the preliminary design level. I am working with our attorney to meet with their counsel to see exactly what would be required for the fire lane. But I have enough information and strategic planning vision at this point to recommend the statement of option, just given the circumstances that we're facing. Doing nothing is not an option in my opinion, given the age of the substation. And the age of the substation is also a concern for the timing. So if we were to delay moving forward with an option, pursuing land for an open air substation, we're likely adding a couple years to the timeline, just in real estate negotiations and permitting and then CMP negotiations and survey. So that's my executive recommendation. So,
I have one curiosity. It is a long river. There is a lot of sand base and soil. As if you put it on that other part where you're thinking it can be, has that been soil tested for stability for that section? Because you can have something decent here and you can have the next piece not. I'm just curious.
Yeah, geotech analysis will tell us what's in the ground, and civil engineers will be engaged in the whole process. But normally, when you build a substation, foundations, steel structures, and all the stuff, there's a significant amount of engineering design that goes in the underground portion of the station. So all of that would come into play as part of the engineering analysis.
I raised this question because it's happening like in the past year, where the engineer side inventing storms and it was something that was not done. Yeah, and stability was not. That's the reason I was just asking if that was something part of it. What example?
Not explicitly to date, but it's a part of the process.
So the key assumption is that the land is buildable. I mean, you can build a foundation for a substation on that land. How reasonable is that? I have no idea.
Well, I think it's, my experience is very reasonable, but one of the things I've thought, question I've asked is, sewer plant is going through extensive rebuilds, and then I would assume that they would have done some geotech as part of their expansion plans. And what's there may be enough. We will say what we saw there is okay or wasn't okay before we go do this. I do that all the time when I'm working, trying to find out if somebody nearby has done the borings and nobody yet. This one seems pretty easy to be able to just call the superintendent and say,
Where is this?
Sewer district. Sewer district.
Okay.
we've requested that information. They've indicated willingness to share it, so we're just waiting on that. For the flood analysis input as well, because they did their own. But there is a balance on what we need an engineer to sign off on versus what we can rely on others for, and depends on the time that's passed and stuff. But yes, we've reached out and asked them for their data. So,
Because I know that's the question that's going to come up.
Well, it's better to know now, it's cheaper to ask, because my experience in other parts of the town is we have sands, we have clay underneath it, more sand, and we get bedrock. I don't know specifically here, because we have a river that goes through. Close to bedrock here, but we might have some information. Oh, I mean, if there's clay, that is a concern.
So Anna, you're looking
Good.
for,
Pretty good.
so you're looking for a vote to proceed on the,
not at this meeting. I'm going to ask you at the next meeting to authorize me to seek PUC approval for the project, which is the start. So once you let me go forward with that, then PUC gets their say, and they'll have their legal look it over, and they have engineers that assist them, so they'll analyze it for feasibility from that standpoint. So yes or no, it's called a certificate of public convenience and necessity filing, so we'll have to go through that. And then we'll have another PUC step for issue of the debt.
A lot
So two
of,
approvals.
lot of things need to be decided in schedule.
Yes.
What's your assessment of the risk in our current substation?
Well, I am not an engineer, but from my management standpoint, our risk is,
Unacceptable?
our risk needs to be mitigated. The substation, just its age, it usually upgrades are done on the 40-year mark is the traditional substation life before we start looking at upgrades, replacements. So we're well beyond that. And as Todd had indicated, we're beyond the point where we can do significant repairs and upgrades because it's not just the part that breaks, it's everything else that's connected to it.
And it's live.
Having outdated equipment, putting new parts in, that doesn't either won't work or doesn't make sense. So we're like I said, doing nothing is not an option at this point. We need to do something to replace the water screen substation. And because it could continue for months, it could continue for years. There isn't any prediction at this point. Because it's not just a single piece of equipment, it's all the other components as well. So anything you want to add? Step in there.
Yeah, I guess, basically that first slide, we talked about safety, reliability. There's not much in that existing station that would meet any modern design standards or codes, right? So I agree very much with her on that.
Well, good, you
But it may not have codes when it was built.
If codes existed.
But
So,
to try and upgrade it now or make changes, then we are required potentially to bring it up to code depending on the project. And that we also have a safety issue with personnel and that we can't work on the thing without taking an outage. So not only do we have the long-term forecast of how long is it going to be reliable, it's pretty impactful to our operations when we can't do any work without taking an outage. And our customers experience that, and we get quite a bit of feedback on that. So I don't know, Kevin, if you want to add anything on the safety.
Well, the clearances are just unacceptable. They're very close. When you go through there, you don't want to raise your hands. You don't want to put your arms up. Everything is very close. Uncovered wire. The clearances, ground level. Everything is, regulators are ground level with you. So if you're working on them or have to work on them, you have to be careful. Every step you make in it, you have to be careful. It's a very, very dangerous substation. The reason why I like to skid mount is because of the fact that there's less exposed parts. And we've had animal contacts in there where everything is so close that if it draws us an arc, it will shoot across everything and just disintegrate everything. It's happened before. And yes, it has. And, the skid mount, I think it will alleviate a lot of those issues.
Is that easy to work on? For
Easier, the skid mount?
yeah, yes.
Well, like Todd had said, there's different aspects of it. It's going to be different for us because we're not used to doing certain things. But if you've ever seen that substation or a substation, on an open air substation, everything is live. Everything around you is energized. So you really have to be careful on every step that you take. The skid mount, I believe, is going to be not as aggressive as that. And
So once you're inside there, it's not going to be as.
The The skid solution is going to be a steel fabricated box. So with doors and maintenance access points and stuff, but ultimately,
I didn't
It's-
visualize.
yeah, so you'll have the chain link fence, the barbed wire to keep the public out. But to his point is, if you're inside the fence, there's nothing necessarily, very little that's actually touchable with anything. It's all gonna be contained. Connections between all the high voltage equipment will be underground cabling and duct system. So there's safety associated with that. Aesthetically, I think there's sort of a little bit of a benefit there too. The steel structure sticking up in the air, but ultimately the animal contact, squirrels run down these lines all the time, they get blasted, right? The customers go out. If it's a fully contained unit with no ability for creatures to get in or out of it, you do have reliability benefit those momentary outages that will occur.
Think tractor trailer.
That's what it is. That's
Back
exactly
it in and up.
No.
So, Kenny, you said one of the things you cut on attention is 40 years in, when we started doing upgrades. Looking forward now, and I'm not gonna be around 40 years from now, but can we go in and do upgrades to this good now, but we're talking down the road?
Another one there. This one's a capacity, right? What's the capacity of this substation?
As far as the KVA or
Well, we know we have 12 megs up at West Kennebunk, what's this?
that, it's 3 of them down there, so. Probably, so,
Yeah, the capacity to carry load out of those 3 units is a lot higher than the load feeding.
Right.
But yeah, there's 3 transformers.
12.
2 are 1014, and one is 12, 120. So, say 30 to 40, right? And you're only using 30.
So I have a couple of questions for Anna. Has a property survey been done?
Yes,
So we know where our points are. Is the certificate of need for PUC, is that site specific?
project specific.
No,
That's
site
part of
specific.
my, that's part of my due diligence with them is what is the technical information that they want for the filing, because I intend to do it on preliminary or I think it's 30% design for the approvals. So yes, I think in general it is site specific, but they don't have a guide really for all the technical specifications that I have to include. I don't have a roadmap of a consumer and utility asking for a CPCN. We don't have to do non-wires alternative. Some CMD and person have to do that. So
Well,
you're asking me a legal
My
question.
concern is the steps in the procedure. If we go ahead and go to the PUC and say, this is, we want a certificate of need for this particular location, and we find out we can't build it there. So I think one of the other things that should go along with this application you're talking about is talking to the town to find out, make sure that we're gonna be able to do it in that location where it is. So we've got a lot of things going on there. Floodplain and riverine issues with DEP checking in on that. Geotech been done or not? We talked months ago about doing the geotech inspection.
Flood analysis is first, then
Talking
geotech.
about geotech with soil.
That's coming. We're
Carrying
done with that yet.
capacity, biofields, any of that stuff.
I don't think that level is going to be required for the PUC. The PUC is more of a,
If you don't get a permit from the town, PUC doesn't matter.
well,
So the
if they don't
town
get a,
is, I'm sure the town has a role in this.
It's a permit.
Under
It's a
zoning.
permit. It's a permit.
I'm not sure it's a permit. It's
It's a
considered
public
as essential.
facility with probably a
It's-
special exception.
It's considered an essential. Correct. So essential services, and those were exempt under the ordinance that goes with
And I think we have a fairly low risk of the rejection, given that we have an existing substation on that site. So was part of the reason for my recommendation of moving forward with a skid mounted in the existing location.
Probably existing prior to zoning.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
So you've seen the site? Is there enough room to put the ground mat in addition to the skid mount on top of it or around it?
Yeah, so ultimately it'd be a full grounding analysis, right? So you do the ground grid design, which includes fencing, all the equipment connections. So it'd be a full design of that. We take all of the solar sensitivity data as it exists today, and we build a full three-dimensional model of the ground system.
But you have to get that in before you can make the skid. So that's what I'm saying, is there's a room enough to get all of that in. So I think that's the room to make the skid mount.
I wanted to clarify the PUC approval timeline and that the filing wouldn't happen until March is my target. And the reason is because I have to draft the filing, which has to be supported. SGC can help with that. I also need to bring an attorney in. So the goal that I have is a March timeline, and hopefully they can issue a decision in 3 months. They don't have a timeline, so they don't have to issue a decision in 3 months, but I would ask them to do so. That way we can make the July deadline to get it in front of you to go for a referendum in November. So I gotta line things up.
Have you talked to anybody in the town about this proposal?
Yes.
What's their input?
I don't, I think there's appreciation on upgrading the infrastructure, and I haven't heard any concerns about permitting or moving forward. They're aware that we're pursuing it.
Is there a reason that we would have our hands tied to going to a vote in November versus going to the in June? We want to go, just ask to raise our bond limit, which is
Yes.
consideration. We got a number of four. We have a limit now of 6.
Less than 6.
Less than 6.
Six limit. Take away whatever we are.
Right.
It just depends on.
Two.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry, I said on. 6.
Two.
Yeah. So then you have 2 there.
Why wait?
It just depends on the sequence. If you want PUC approval before we go for a vote and referendum, we don't necessarily have to wait, but.
I think these all can run in conjunction with each other. I don't see any reason to step on one after the other.
I'd rather get the voters signing off early. Because if they don't sign off, like they did with the school budget, then.
Then you can.
Yeah, so I
Figure it out.
think we ought to have a goal of looking to have something to do with the voters. June, in terms of the bond rate. Nothing more than, we've got these expected costs, we have this facility, we want to we're asking the voters to raise our bond limit from X to Z. Right? Make it simple. You never know.
I'm sort of with you on that, George. If possible, June would be great.
We're gonna have less
No objection.
Less voters.
less voters in June and November,
Yes.
which probably this year is gonna be interesting.
So somewhere in the literature that came out this week, I saw something about a report. Is this the report that was included, was talked about in this thing?
Well, I have engineering reports to support my decision that I'll share with you, but I wasn't, the engineering analysis, I wasn't planning on making that public. If you'd like to see that, I'm happy to share it.
I'm kind of curious about what else was considered specifically, not just in general, back in the night. At one time in the past, we talked about running Henry's line down from West End Road. Is that something that was considered? Just using this as a switching facility?
We, that's the West K expansion option, I think, that you talked about. Is that,
I'm not necessarily seeing the gating there.
I don't know, that's why I'm asking.
I mean, Are you saying to remove the link from C&P to Water Street by running Hendricks 34 down to pick up the transformers here? Because then you still have the same problem with the existing station in the gate. Or
Well,
redundant.
that's what I'm asking, if it's considered,
Yeah, I don't remember that. Honestly, the only time I,
it's before your time.
yeah, that's,
Well,
I
not,
don't recall that.
may have been considered for tying the substations together, but can't.
The word manufacturer came up, and later on, you said there were several companies that just, they said that's not really an issue.
No, and I've given a bunch of them sort of a heads up when I reached out to say, give me so that I can work with Anna to process some stuff. It's like, I give you some preliminary ballpark, it's not right down to the every little nut and bolt on the whole thing, but give me where we think we're at.
Then the three things you brought up at the beginning for the substation, safety and reliability, I think those are given, nobody's gonna question that, but future growth. Do we have any projections of what the growth area would be coming off of this substation? What the build out might be from town zoning? Is there any way to get that? Because the reason I ask this is because the designated growth areas in town are not in that direction. They're all up off of the West Kennebunk substation.
And that's, I would say that's the difficult, it's a difficult aspect in the industry right now because you have growth from population density increase, but then you also have potential growth from electrification. And we don't necessarily have good tools to forecast that at this point.
Nobody's got that.
So I think we can
Because the ball is not working.
exactly. So how many people are gonna buy EVs, how many, all of those factors that we can't predict at this point.
But if we have almost 8,000 customers, and yet we have only 900 business commercial, that would indicate, I think, that a lot of the, and the zoning that we have isn't really that conducive to industrial growth or business growth. So most of our growth likely to be residential, so another crystal ball question, I guess. And the load isn't gonna be that high, and distributed generation, it grows at all in some of them. Right? I would be service.
And to your point about what we'll look at, I mean, we will look at load growth, but we'll look at the historical, what we can gather for inputs into future predictions, but that's, we don't have a crystal ball at this point. So we have to
But again,
come up
if
with
we had expansion, we're saying we're taking the old substation away, yeah, we've got the land there, for the expansion. So it's not like we're giving up, like we're just sitting on the same piece.
It's capacity of the skid.
You know, my sense is, right now, we're getting into the weeds. And I think that the urgent question is, we have a substation that's past the Beautiful Lake that's at risk, and we ought to move forward with the planning and answer the questions that you're asking during the process of design. But, I mean,
I'd like to get through the weeds so I can actually see what the picture is.
well, I think that as a board, we need to stay big picture, not get into how many new incandescent bulbs are going to be installed. This can go on endlessly.
I don't know, I'm not interested in that.
Well, I think the interest is, my concern is that we serve our customers by moving forward with the substation as expediently as possible. And this has been, I really would hate to answer people at Kennebunk by doing anything to slow down this process. And getting in the weeds in a design process of which I am no design expert. And I really do not think that my opinion on design is really even valid. As a board member, big picture, we got a ticking time bomb. And that's what we ought to be focusing on, mitigating or providing the resources that this can move along as quickly as possible.
I hear you, Wayne. I sort of agree with Curtis. What I hear from the experts is your capacity of your existing station that we're using 1/3 of. So it's not capacity issue forever. regardless of the growth that may happen, we're only using 1/3 of the capacity. Why are we even talking about it? It's really the age of the equipment is past due, and we need to focus
I
on it.
think there were three criteria, it's called safety, reliability, future growth. I'm just happy about future growth. It's
There you
there,
go.
it's there. If it's not there, we don't have to worry about it. We already have.
I've got 2/3 that we
If
can
we have
handle.
excess capacity, that's fine.
Okay, we have excess capacity.
Good point.
Bob?
So I think. There we go. So I think your schedule is, your plan is to apply to the PUC first, before you look at anything else.
Well, I can do a referendum in conjunction, but the PUC, we can't do anything until the PUC gives approval to move forward.
PUC doesn't tell us or impact us on our work.
They, yes and no, it is separate, but they get their own approval process for the issuance of debt. But we plan to use wind bonding, they're very familiar with that, I don't anticipate any issues. So that the two, and then ultimately PUC gets to approve rates to pay for each substation, so we get several bites of the apple. So we're really good process. So the reason why I'm not asking this meeting, one, wanted to give you time, it's a big project, lots to think about. But in the 2026 budget, I do have some funds in there to support the PUC filing and some initial project management. So that's why I'm not asking for approval today. I'm going to ask you for approval of the budget at the next meeting, and I think that's the appropriate time to ask for you to authorize me to move forward as well. So, any other questions for Todd and Josh while we have them here? I guessed I'd have them out of here in about an hour, so. Not that they're on a strict timeline, but it is 6 o'clock.
Good work.
You're right.
So where are we with the site analysis?
Josh, would you mind speaking to that one?
For the floodplain analysis,
The site itself, where are we in that site analysis? You gave us an overview of the floodplain levels.
so
We don't have a geotech report of any kind yet, do we?
We were leveraging the results of the final floodplain analysis to say, okay, so the flood concern is not gonna inhibit us from being able to use that property. Next step, get the geotech in there. And take that step. I don't know if that's gonna be before year end, but ultimately, that's kind of next on the list of to-do things. So,
And I asked, sorry to interrupt, but I asked it to be done in that sequence because of the flood risk. I didn't want to pay for geotech if we were gonna be told that it's not viable from a flood risk perspective, so.
and that full Sanford report is expected to hit our desk second week of December.
So timing wise, if we can engage geotech before the end of the year, we'll likely do that. But we're getting close to the holidays.
Good.
Any other questions before we let them go?
Thank you very
No,
much.
good, thank you.
Yeah,
Great. Appreciate the time,
Thank you
guys.
very much.
Is,
Thank you.
it is actually warming for me to hear this report. I think last time I went to a meeting, we actually had decided that the problem was gonna be resolved.
Good, let's just fly on that church.
Compliment to you, Pat.
There you go.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks for seeing
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Yeah, very nice.
Just give us a minute to transition here.
Hey, Kurt, if I decide to stroll in the weeds, I'm gonna stroll in the weeds. I really don't give a shit what your opinion is.
Well, Bob, I understand that, but wasting time on details, when details haven't been decided, is a waste of time. And I'm waiting for not, know what to be doing.
You keep going, I don't care.
But I have been to too many meetings, to get so far in the weeds, it's ridiculous. I mean, one meeting, we had a meeting where we discussed how high the lights were on the building. Come on.
Okay,
ridiculous.
Let yourself out.
Board to be dealing at a certain level. Where that level is a little bit discretionary. But dealing with the weeds for a plan, an engineering plan that hasn't even been developed yet, is a waste of everybody's time.
So go ahead and do a plan where you don't have details.
You don't have to know the details. You need to ask questions about whether or not there's sufficient capacity. When you do the design, make sure there's assistant capacity for growth. That's our.
Well, I see a little give on both. I think you need to have an understanding of what we're facing. And that's in the weeds. But we don't need to get, we rely on experts to do that. And we challenge them to, and if they can't answer the question, that tells us something.
And I also think it's inappropriate to be swearing at another member of the board in a public meeting. I'm sorry that you have that language, that's the way you deal with people you disagree with, but I think it's inappropriate.
I agree. I don't think it's right.
Okay. I'll refrain from it.
Thanks. Okay, next on the agenda.
Do we want to wait for Becky? She
Oh, yeah.
stepped out for just a second.
Now, you know, Bob, you got that gavel. You start slamming that thing anytime you want.
I'm not a fan of gavels. That's why I don't use the open or close. I might hit over the head with it, though.
It is a piercing noise, though.
It's, yeah.
Well, we could do that in auction.
Have a little
A
dimple.
little handheld one.
That's one of the things I like about the phones for the alarm, is I can change it to something more soothing. As a kid, I always remember that. I just, not a good way to start the day.
Okay, next up is the review and approve the minutes of September 2025. Everybody had a chance to look at them, any corrections? If not, we have a motion to accept them as written. Second. Perfect. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we talked about the same thing for the minutes of the October meeting. Any corrections? If not, we'll look for a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All those in favor? Aye. We have the September and October operating reports. We want to go into them. Does anybody have questions for Matt? Or Anna?
No, those are for me.
We'll start with the September one. On September. We don't need to take action, right?
Correct. Another question?
I was going to
September.
say is on the September one, of being able to, be able to, the consumer-owned utilities to be able to raise the limits of cash on reserves.
Yep.
And that has been a long time process there. And I know, I think you had to go before the PUC and all kinds of things on this and stuff too. So, excellent.
I'm not hearing anything else on the September one. We're going to.
Yeah, I have a couple.
On September? Oh, okay.
So when you had your NISC representatives coming for the new software for billing, are they talking about, this was a beta testing process, it was just informational?
This was business analysis, looking at our data and our processes and how it fits into the new software. So we had provided them a download of all of our customer service database and then working through that with them so that it gets put in the right place in the new software, to put it in plain terms.
So they suggested a data scrubbing process to clean things up?
They did. That was part of the outcome of that, yeah. So Kathy's working on that
to go
currently.
along with that?
Yes, lots of, they're calling it data validation, just
Yeah.
for the folks who are listening, our
The
employees
terminology is,
watch the meeting afterwards. But yes, there's that going on as well, to make sure we have a successful implementation.
Okay, second question I had on the second paragraph, administration, is the DOE fellowship, is that still funded?
Yes,
Okay, we don't have anything coming down from Washington that's gonna say.
it's an existing program. They're working for us. It's going, so I can't make any guarantees about what the feds are going to do. But she is working, and it's going well.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what she's doing?
Yeah, so she's her background is data analytics. So she's helping draft the next climate action plan. That's what I submitted for the fellowship. With the climate action plan, the expectation is that we identify vulnerabilities, assess risk, and propose mitigation, basically, to remediate the risk from climate impacts. So one of the struggles that I had last year, 23, when I had to create a report, was taking all the climate data that's available out there and turning it into something meaningful for the utility. I'm not a data analyst, but she's doing some really exciting things, looking at the wind gauges that she's been able to find from public sources and trying to correlate that with our outage. Information is just one example of some of the data crunching that she's doing, looking at heating degree days versus cooling degree days, how that's going to change over time. So that's just a sample, but it's kind of exciting to get that level of analysis and expertise. So we're pretty fortunate to have her working for us.
Sounds good.
I make a motion to accept the.
You don't have to.
That's the operations report.
I have a question on finance. Talk about the increasing the cash reserve limits. How are we positioned now relative, because we were hampered before?
Yeah, so
Are we making any plans or headway to get further ahead?
Yeah, so that's part of the budget and the 5-year plan that I put out. We are, our cash reserve levels are at or close to the limits that were allowed before. So it is going to take us some time to build that up. We're now allowed to have 35% of our total operating. Before it was significantly less than that. So it will take us some time to build that up, and that is in the plan.
Good, thank you.
You're welcome.
So let's look at the October operating report. Anybody have questions or comments? Oh, yeah, I do. On number D, we had 13 accounts that were disconnected. It seemed to be higher than what's in the past. Is there something going on?
I think I'm going to have to, can I get back to you on that? Because I need to ask Kathy. I think there was a period where we were not able to do disconnects for staffing purposes. So then they kind of caught up with us and we had more to do at one time than we normally did. I don't think it's an indication of the economy of the area at this point.
And at this point in November, we're not going to be as easily to disconnect if we.
The moratorium went into effect on November 15th.
15th, okay.
Correct.
People should do know that.
What's that?
Yeah.
The moratorium.
The 15th.
Yes. And that doesn't mean we can't disconnect people in the winter. It just means we have to get PUC approval before we do that.
Can you expand a little bit on the meeting with MEMA and FEMA? Was that part of the circuit too?
Yes, so MEMA is our state organization that administers the grant. So we had to apply to FEMA. MEMA's involved in the application, but then MEMA's the one that actually distributes the money. So
Did they kick in some money?
yes, they do. So the feds pays 75%, the state pays 15%, and our share is 10%. So meeting with MEMA was to kind of finalize the grant. But some of the administrative stuff for the grant, it's very, I don't want to be derogatory, but it is very, very difficult to follow the FEMA grant process and all the steps. And so MEMA helped out a lot. And actually both FEMA and MEMA have been very helpful in this process and supporting us with the project, but it is still very bureaucratic, and there's a web portal that I have to learn and understand, and MEMA helped with that.
The one that I had a little bit was because of the sale by NextEra of our the subsidiary
Yes.
of our solar, and you went ahead and contacted Madison Energy
Yes.
Infrastructure, and any details on that company, large company?
I don't have many details yet. I know they're an investment firm based out of New York City. I do have a meeting with them around the first part of December to get to know them. There was no upfront notification. I was aware that NextEra was considering selling their portfolio, but we didn't get notice that they did sell until the deal was already closed. And then the contract didn't require them to give us notice or ask for approval if they were selling their entire portfolio. So,
But the terms carry through.
yes.
So 2 weeks after that, NextEra went out and bought gas plants in the south.
Any other questions on the October report?
Yes, the DSSMR inspection was conducted,
Yes.
and that is pending, and we have maybe an update in December. I don't know.
I need to check in with them, but yes, my goal is to file that with FERC before the end of the year. But if I file it in January, I don't think there's going to be any regulatory risk or enforcement issues. I would like to get it done and submit it sooner than later.
Okay.
So on the meter installation, you say roughly we have 1,000 to go, or you did at that point.
Yeah.
Most of those are residential.
Yep, and I'm happy to report that they have been working frantically, and we are down to less than 200.
Great.
Yeah.
What about the commercial, industrial meters?
We're really going to cheer at the next meeting.
Yeah, we have a pizza party.
I was going to say we might on that one.
It is mostly residential. There's a few customers that have asked us to do weekend outages because we have to take it, businesses. So I think we have 2 or 3 of those left to put meters on. But the bulk of the remaining meters were the more remote areas outside of town.
What about the commercial and the business accounts? Wouldn't it be helpful to bring those into the database as well?
Well, they've all been,
Those all been done?
yeah, we have 7,600 meters total. That's commercial and
Well,
residential.
we
So-
learned early on in the changeover that there was a problem with it getting the right meters to go with some of the phase, the polyphase on some of them.
Oh, Duncan took care of that. We got the right meters. So, yep, we're down to less than 200 before we're complete, which is exciting for our reporting and data collection and just performance in general.
So Duncan, we're proud of getting things done on that.
So the last question I had was on 4C, the pass-through rates.
Mm-hmm.
When was that effective?
November 1st.
And how would the electricity that was used prior to that charge?
It's all bills rendered on or after the effective date of the new rate.
So this is electricity used prior to that date?
Yes.
Not that, so.
And that's traditional implementation process for rate changes. But in this case, it pass-through rate it's a zero-sum game. They're not paying any extra or less. They're going to pay what the actual costs are. So whether they pay it in October or November, it's a timing issue, not a fairness or equity issue.
Zero-sum game for us.
It's a pass-through rate, so there's no revenue for them as well.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. But it does affect the customers.
Well, everything affects the customers. But they're not paying any more or less than they would have depending on timing of the implementation. That's my zero-sum
It doesn't
game.
matter, it's sort of like the replies I got, when I was, why are you doing this to this, now it's beginning of winter.
I'm sorry, what?
Why are you increasing the rates at the beginning of winter?
Yeah, so the pass-through rates, we have to collect actual cost, and if we don't, then we're under-recovering and we have a cash flow problem and financial problems.
But somewhere in the report, we just talked about how it never lines up.
Correct, there's some timing,
Lag.
regulatory lag, which is understood in by the PUC and people setting rates. I understand, but we have to collect our cost.
So that was the treasurer's report.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Okay. Next up, the net energy billing policy adoption.
Did we do the treasurer's report?
Yeah, you were just in.
Or just about, otherwise, let's see.
I thought that you were dancing around. You were talking about the
I
rates.
was still back in October.
Oh, well, if you look at the treasurer's report, that's what was questioned about. The revenue. Okay. You have more?
Well, the question I had on the revenue was the minimum charge revenue. That was because we changed our minimum charge, right?
At the beginning of 2025, that's
Right.
correct. Yeah.
That explains the large increases that we had. And the other one on cash and short-term investments on the last page, next to the last page. Are there specific reasons other than the bleeding money and why we reduced so much?
From the September 2024 cash
Right.
levels to September 25, part of that was the over recovery of the pass-through rate that was
Right. The overcharges and the over recovery?
well, it's over recovery is those are the same things, over recovery. So
We're not getting that back.
what's your question?
Well, the change in our cash is not gonna come back necessarily.
Well, it will as we build up the cash reserve, but part of what Matt and I are working on for future is separating out our delivery cash from our delivery rate cash from our
Good idea.
pass-through cash, because our pass-through cash is not available to us for operations. So it's not money that, so your comment about getting it back, it wasn't, it was intended to be flowed back through the pass-through. So the cash that we have remaining is associated with our delivery rate, and with the increased allowance for the cash reserve and the change in law this year, we will work to build that up. But the 1.7 is roughly what we were allowed by law to have in the books for the
It would be better,
delivery
it would
rate
be
component.
better defined in the future, is that what you're saying? As far as broken out?
Yeah, I would say it's defined fine. It's just the reporting that we're working on to make that a little bit easier to monitor and review.
Okay, moving on to the net energy billing program.
Would you like me to speak to this?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
I have questions.
Okay, so just a quick introduction then. We have lots of laws and regulations associated with net energy billing. Investor-owned utilities are treated different than consumer-owned utilities. So consumer-owned utilities were allowed to limit the facility to 100 kilowatts, and we're also allowed to limit shared financial or prohibit shared financial interest. Though adopting those limitations as policy is to our advantage for reducing our operational impacts. And one of the issues that's happening with net energy billing is cost shifting from one group of customers to another. So again, these limitations help for that. So not only does it help us reduce operational complexity, but it limits cost shifting from one customer group to another.
Can you explain that?
Yes, because when you install a solar facility on your home, we have to compensate you at
The retail rate, right?
yeah, so a kilowatt for kilowatt. So I have to pay, the KLPD has to pay essentially our full retail rate for that energy that we receive. So we're paying
Right.
16, just roughly 15, 16 cents for energy that we can buy from a producer
Right.
for 9 cents.
Yeah.
So that's the cost shifting that happens and why we're allowed to limit it, not only for the operational impacts on our feeders and the engineering and administrative costs that we incur to manage all that.
The other ratepayers that don't have solar have to pick up the loss from the retail purchase from a distributed generator.
Because we have to do this retail.
Isn't it correct to say that, my experience with solar is you get a system designed to put on your house based on what your uses are. And if at the end of the year you produce more than you used, you lose that increment. It goes to the utility. You don't get you don't
get credit for it.
You don't get credit for it.
Right.
You don't. So I'm
But
getting
you're still buying,
well,
you're still getting a retail refund.
not the entire amount.
So the law changed 2 years ago in, beginning in 25, and now we have to monetize any unused credits and send them to the low income assistance program.
Oh.
So we no longer retain any unused credits.
And so the reason, the 100 kilowatts, is that, why is that the threshold?
Because we're small.
Where the law was written.
Yep,
I
and
don't know why.
and because it kind of comes down to engineering, it's financial and operational, in that we have a small system. So if we don't put this 100 kW limit in there, the limit is 5 megawatts. That's
And
a quarter
we're
of our
only
load.
25.
And
But we have, up to date, we probably haven't, other than the solar farm, we haven't had anybody produce something more than, or even up to that.
oh no, we have almost a megawatt of capacity installed in solar around town. Just with,
Well,
yes.
spread around.
But not individual
Not
Correct.
installations.
But I think we'll have people approach eventually, and they come to you for larger projects.
Yeah.
That if you don't limit it, we're the size of ours at only 25, and they say, well, we can go up to 5 megawatts. Well, I know, we gotta have a number in between that is practical.
And
I think that, it's a fairness issue. I think that the law was designed to allow residential people to put on solar and do it economically. 100 kilowatts is beyond the size of a standard home. So far beyond that, if I had a home, I put on my garage, I put on my neighbor's house and all these other things. So that really wasn't the intent of the law, to allow individuals to become their own little utilities.
Right.
So that's why there needs to be some sort of limit. Without a limit, they could be their own utilities and be subject to this transaction rate, which isn't really fair.
So have we had anybody ask to do over 100?
yes, and I've told them, no, we have a 100 kW limit, but I need, which past practice, we have always said that and limited, but I need the paper to go with
So,
our practice,
Yeah, we-
because it does not give me as strong a footing to say no if I don't have a board policy
I mean,
approved.
the law was created to incentivize solar installations. Question is whether it should have incentivized at retail or should have incentivized at wholesale. Wholesale would be fair to all utilities, but you remember that we're not all utilities. They really wanted to take a strike at some of the larger utilities.
I think that's just it. We're such a small utility compared to what a large utility can absorb that.
I mean, it does get kind of expensive. It's about 80,000 a year.
Yep.
Right now, at our current level of.
That's a cost of the district.
Well, as you said, it's not a cost to the district, it gets redistributed to everybody. Surprisingly, even people who have solar panels, they get a little piece of that fed back to them.
Yep. So one of the problems I have with it is they talk about 100 kilowatt plate capacity. And we know that that's not really possible. I mean, we're not looking at 100% efficiency. So if the plate capacity is 80% of your actual capacity is 80% or less of plate capacity, 100 kilowatts is actually pushing it back to 80. So
Well, how much did you say that you can get off of that?
I don't know, but
It's
but
a lot more than almost anybody needs.
Okay.
So this would be like a solar farm, community solar.
But the nameplate's different, as is point than the actual.
So we don't have any community solar requests, do we?
Well, and
At this
that
point.
would, no, because we don't allow the shared financial interest.
Yes.
And that's
the
what
important
community
part.
solar essentially is. Where,
However, there is a court case.
that for Passamaquoddy, is that what, yeah, that's a different issue. That's.
Different but similar.
Yeah, it addressed the shared financial interest,
Right.
but that's not what we're talking about here.
All right, I'd like to make a motion that
District
we
attorney
approve.
that took it.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the policy related to Maine's net energy billing program.
I'll second that motion.
Any more discussion?
This is something necessary to back up what we've been putting out there anyway.
And what the law allows us to
The law is,
Yes.
the law's pretty clear, and the P&C regs are pretty clear.
Yes. And this was drafted by our attorney in
Yeah,
conjunction
I think
with
it's more
the
formal
language in the law.
than just saying our policy. Our practice is, this is a policy, and I think that's important that we have it consistently, and
This
that's
is a policy set by this board.
Yes. Yeah, and before it was just a practice that, oh, this is what our number is.
Correct.
I think it gives a little more strength to the manager and your position, so.
So if we were to get a proposal that was above 100 kilowatts, it would be beneficial to the district. Would you have to come back to this board to get a waiver or to change the policy?
I would not waive the policy. And the reason is if I waive for one, I have to waive for all. I don't. Fairness and, I guess equal application is something that the commission is pretty tuned into, and I don't get to waive it.
So we're saying that we would never see another next era project.
No, that's different. This is a customer installing solar panels on their homes. You're talking about a utility scale. It's behind the meter and in front of the meter type of situations. So this is behind the meter.
Motion. In a second.
Yeah, we have a motion in a second. I'm just trying to process the numbers. I just, I was at a planning board meeting last week where somebody has a 100-acre farm. So they have plenty of land to generate more than they need on average. But they're gonna do stuff with that. I'm just thinking, and my brother has a farm. He's got solar on his house and he put solar on his barn. He spent 60 grand with revision like 10 years ago. But he uses a lot of juice because he's got an organic farm and he's got a lot of refrigerators and animals and stuff. So I don't know at the end of the day what his nameplate capacity on it, but I'm guessing that it's still not going to be close to 100. Probably it's going to be close to 60. That's a lot. Well,
But the only thing that I say on this is that it could come back to the board, get down the line. If this is our policy, but we're not going to waive individual deals.
I like the idea if the policy has been to say no.
The practice has been the same.
The practice has been to say no, then we're actually adopting a policy. So.
And again, I want to remind you that if we don't have the 100 kW limit, the limit allowed by law is 5 megawatts.
Yes.
And so it's 100 kW or it's 5 megawatts, and we don't.
There's not, I was looking for something in between.
We don't get to do that now.
Yeah.
And investor-owned utilities don't get to do this. They have to allow the 5 megawatts. Only consumer-owned utilities get to do this in recognition of our size.
Right. Okay, so we had a motion and a second. Any more discussion?
The real change needs to come in the way that the net energy billing is paid for. We need to get away from the retail price. So it's not happening.
It's the state's.
Well, no, I'm not going to give anything to CMP.
That topic has dominated the last legislative session, and I imagine it will this upcoming one as well.
This Passamaquoddy case has not been finished yet, right?
It has, the commission ruled, and I think there's still a period for appeal, but I don't know if either party will. I mean, I can't imagine Passamaquoddy would want to appeal that was.
No, it would be Eastern Maine Co-op that would appeal, but they haven't indicated that they're going to.
I don't have any insight into what that.
Well, actually, the attorney used to work for us here.
Okay.
But the point of 100 kW projects, very large projects, 10 times the size of mine.
Yep.
Put 10 houses together. Passamaquoddy was about linking all these together in one.
Yep.
So, I mean, I think it doesn't preclude someone from putting in a lot of solar. I mean, I've got a pretty big 11 kW system, so, that's a lot of solar, and put in, 9 of them. That's a lot. That's really a commercial project. So I don't think we're going to be clipping anyone's wings. It's just prudent to have a limit.
Okay.
It's a discouragement to development for distributed generation.
Are you looking for agreement?
No,
Or
just making a statement, just throwing the weeds out there.
Okay. I call a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
4 in favor.
Thank you.
Okay. We're running up on time. It's, we still got a lot to do.
I have a hard stop at 7.
Okay. introduction of the budget 5-year plan. You want to do this in 10 minutes and do the executive session, or you? Oh, boy, I mean,
Well, I'll remind you, the purpose of, my process is to introduce it to you, give you time to ask questions, review. So I'm not asking for a vote on budget today. I have proposed December 16th as our next meeting. So happy to answer any questions you have tonight, or you can follow up, in email. I'll provide, we can have a meeting too if you have some in-depth questions. However you would like to go about it.
I have some questions, Mark. I get so.
I made some marks on that. I wasn't looking for on the 5-year plan. I was looking at the budget. Okay. Because that's what you need to follow up on that.
So was I.
So, yeah, so that's where my questions might be.
You would like this voted on before the end of the year, though, and that would be our meeting of the 16th.
Yes.
We could plan for a longer meeting on the 16th,
Or we
but
could have
that doesn't allow for time to, unless we all agree to submit stuff
Questions ahead of time?
ahead of time. And barrage Anna with a number of questions and give her the time to be exact on the 16th.
or I can meet with you one-on-one between now and the 16th, and then we can meet on the
Let's see if I have
16th and vote and talk about it some more, or, no, I'm open.
I'd be happy to submit some questions to you directly after looking at this. And then maybe you can share.
Yeah, I think, so I think we can share those kind of questions with the group without calling it a meeting, right?
You just can't converse back and forth, so I think if there's,
But if I see what Curtis's questions are, because I'm copied in on that email, and Curtis gets to see the questions that I'm asking and Beverly the same.
Yep.
That would be helpful to the group, I think.
It's a great idea.
So,
you just have to remember to be CC or not reply all, because then we don't,
If you can just see
Yes.
the questions.
just don't reply.
Yeah,
Just
send it
the
to
question
everyone.
and send it to everybody.
Yes.
Don't reply.
Just don't reply.
except me, I'll reply.
Yeah, right. That's,
Okay.
that's one-on-one, or one on the group.
You want a deadline date for those?
Today's the 18th,
If we do it the week before that?
by December 1st.
That's what I said, December 1st. Let's see. Yeah,
Well, the deadline's really yours, because I'm asking you to vote on the 16th, so
I know, so
whenever you wanna.
I want to give you some time if it's going to take time. You never know. So December 1st is a Monday. We make it
It's all right.
December 2nd, that's 2 weeks from now.
That's fine.
2 weeks. So December 2nd.
Did the questions
You
in?
get
Get
your
the questions in
to
Anna.
So then she got time to.
And then she can prepare a response for us to have. I think the agenda on the 16th should be solely on the budget.
Yes, that's fine.
I'm gonna do a one-on-one, so we.
You don't like that? Then why not yet? We skipped that meeting in past years, so.
We might need, hold on, there's,
Usually it's in budget, but there is, you've got.
Well, let's say that 9% of the focus is on the budget.
Yeah, I think we've had one at a time. The grant at the end.
one moment, let me look at it, I've already drafted a agenda for the 16th.
So everybody, December,
Assuming that works for everyone.
so we're saying December 2nd.
Yes. Get your emails. You can do it tomorrow if you want, but no later than December 2nd. Because what's something somebody else says, they probably.
At midnight.
At midnight.
No, at 5 o'clock, like this would be a meeting,
Okay.
because we're not gonna have another meeting on December 2nd, which we could do. We could try to slip in another meeting
Yeah, you can call on me.
So I think we can honor your request for 90% of the meeting on the 16th to be about the budget. But I do need to address purchasing policy.
Okay.
Before the end of the year, because that was noted in our last audit, and I want to get that taken care of.
Well, as long as we get the policy in our hands to review beforehand, that's.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that purchasing policy is on my list, which, just so nobody's surprised, it comes with a bylaw amendment for that 20 grand, because we need to sync up purchasing policy with the $20,000 limit in the bylaws.
Yeah.
So, but I will get that to you ahead of time.
Okay. So we get.
Because the audit indicated that correctly that we need to fix that.
Can we skip to number 10 real quick and talk about FERC and the water quality? Yeah. We just want to 5 minutes, 3
Yep.
minutes.
So I did send you
The letter.
the environmental assessment that we got back. So that's all I was going to update, or I guess just asking, see if you had any questions for me on the environmental assessment, or if you understand what that means. Well, and I'll give you the Cliff Note version is essentially that FERC is signaling that they approve or would approve our surrender application as filed because it meets their criteria, but the requirement for us to file the water quality certificate is stopping the process at this point. So I did have a meeting with Maine DEP to get clarification on the scope of the water quality certificate, and they did indicate that a provision for fish passage needs to be included in the water quality certificate application when we file it. So
Two different things though, really.
Well, absolutely.
Right. FERC is asking for water quality.
No, Maine is asking for water quality.
Well, FERC says
That has to be part of the,
Right.
yes, you have to have that certificate for them to sign.
Prefer,
Right.
but the
But-
fish passages remain at the time.
But DEP wants fish passage included in that water quality.
Right.
Which nothing to do with water quality. Right.
but federal law gives the state authority in this instance to require the water quality certificate. So then they're exercising that authority and also enforcing state requirements for fish passage as part of that. So I did talk, they would be willing to support another extension of the water quality certificate filing with FERC in order to wait for the grants, to see if we're going to get any feedback on the grants. I would assume that we should hear something soon, but I think the NOAA timeline has already slipped. They're not stating that it slipped. They said they're still on track, but the fact that they haven't made any notifications or started negotiations, as far as I'm aware of, indicates that they're not going to meet their original deadline of January 2026 for disbursement. So we can wait a little while longer, but if something doesn't come through with the grants, then we have to come up with an alternative.
But you also have the fishing lifeline,
I'm sorry, what?
the other grant.
Yeah, the NIFWIF, National Fish
Fishing
Federation. Yes.
Federation.
We haven't heard back on that one yet either.
Okay.
I do have a question on the water quality, when you visit with them. What kind of cost are they looking at? How many samplings do they think, locations they need? Where do they think they're gonna have to take them?
That's part of our due diligence that we have to, and the money we'll have to spend to figure out what the scope of the water quality is and where we source the data from. I think we can.
Just give me any kind of an idea.
They did cite some public sources, but we have to go back and look at the regulations and see what we're required to to do ourselves and what we can rely on, as public information for part of the analysis and due diligence we'll do for the application. So I don't have a good answer for you at this point.
So how long was the state willing to extend that?
I proposed 6 months. They indicated some willingness to support a 6-month extension. But keep in mind that the more we extend, the longer our FERC process is going to take.
Just keeps on balancing out, yes.
What's the downside to extending the FERC process?
Regulatory risk and any change in law or the process, I guess, would be my initial reaction at this point. And the longer we're in the FERC proceeding, potentially the more legal dollars we pay to be in it. But I think it's the right thing to do at this point to see if we get the grants. But again, if grants are not awarded, then we have to come up with a plan B.
Right.
Okay. We're running on 10 minutes. So I would like to make a motion that we go into executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056A concerning general manager annual performance evaluation. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Stop recording. It is 8 p.m. on November 18th, and we've just come out of executive session, and we are going to conclude the meeting.
We're taking no action.
Taking no further actions. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Sorry, one action. Next meeting date.
Next meeting date. Do we have
December
to?
16th?
Yes, December 16th.
December 16th. Do we have to vote on that every time?
No, we don't. Just
Okay, so the next meeting date is going to be December 16th here at the district offices at 5 p.m.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, guys.